computer. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the One Up Sales Development Podcast. My next guest I got for you guys here. It's a unique individual here. Really happy and excited to have this individual on. Please give me a warm welcome for the one and only Mr. Jared Wexler, solution consultant over at Factory 4.
Perfect. Thank you for having me. Very excited to jump in, kind of share my experiences and all that good stuff.
Yep. Wexler, just before we got started, man, we've been connected for quite some time. I'm really happy to have you on here, man. Thank you for coming on. You know, we share a lot of similarities. You actually went to school near from not where I'm very familiar with the school you went to. I'm not too far from that, Cal Poly. And you know what really got me excited on is that you were one of those original OGs for the company that just recently hit their Series A too. And congrats again, Chili Piper. Shout out to you guys. But thank you for hopping on a show on the One Up Sales Development Podcast, baby. Woo!
Of course, man. Excited to kind of dive in, share some secrets of the trade, kind of dive in the nitty gritty.
Yeah. So, Jared, without further ado, why don't you go just give us a brief preview right now? I know you just started a new role. Congratulations, by the way. Solutions consulting over at Factory 4. Why don't you just dive deep for our audience? Like, what's Factory 4? What do you guys do? And, typically, what do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So Factory 4, we're a manufacturing execution system. So what that means is we work with manufacturers on their production floor. We help them with a lot of different things, mostly digitizing and getting more insight into the data that's going on their floor. There's a term in manufacturing known as backflushing. So what that means is they're really compiling data at the end of the process and they don't get to dive into the insights too much. So we're helping them go to that digital age. In that space, a lot of these systems are older and kind of siloed, so they don't really speak to each other, where we are able to integrate with a lot of them and really kind of have a source of truth and kind of let the operators and people on the floor interact with one place rather than multiple and make reporting and, again, data-driven decisions a bit easier. It's kind of funny. When I first was kind of learning the industry, there's people that have incredibly complex products, right? So like they're making airplanes and they pass around the instructions in a paper binder. And it's kind of mind-blowing to me. That's how they go about things. So we go against change management a lot. It's like the status quo. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But a lot of our customers do see a lot of value in really going to the new age and digitizing some of that stuff that's been done in kind of an antiquated fashion. And then my role, I'm a solutions consultant. So what I do is, the titles kind of changes at every company. I'm basically a sales engineer. So what I do is I help with the technical demonstrations and more catered demos. I will make a custom instance. So like I'll have a hyper-personalized demo based on documents and essentially information that the prospect will send over. And then I help out with RFIs and RFPs. So I'm basically a account executive's best friend as far as getting through those technical conversations and reviews.
Yep. Love it. Sales engineer, very familiar with that. And like you mentioned, you're like an extension to the sales team, right? But you're more on the technical side. You come in, hey, this is what we do. You want to deep dive. AE typically throws out, this is what we need to really focus on. And you really just focus on what that is and, not the other part, and you just walk them through that. Is that correct?
Exactly. It's also cool because it's kind of like a cross-departmental function. So I'm kind of the liaison to product as well. If you have salespeople of giving every feature request that comes across the product, their Slack's going to get a little blown up. So I'm the one who's, so I help with identifying some trends. On top of that, we don't have a fully blown marketing department as of yet. So I've been working with marketing a bit, but also in the role as well, we're helping with product training on the sales side. So we kind of have our hands in a few different buckets, which I always find fun, especially when you're at a smaller stage company. Nice.
Okay, Jared. So I know you're fairly new and you started with Factory 4. I just want to dive a little bit deeper into that. So Factory 4, yes, focus on like manufacturing and stuff. But is it like a platform that you guys typically just really show them like what needs to be done and how to build things, or like how does that really work?
Yeah, so it's a software platform. Where their demos itself, I dive into more the operator side of things. So an operator is the individuals on the floor who are actually putting together things. They would be the end user, all right? So I think sometimes if you dive into that, like the admin or how to set up parts of software, sometimes you get a little too in the weeds. Of course, some people want to know, especially later stage in an evaluation. But I like to show what the end users would see, and then from there, take a value-driven approach. So the first demo is typically kind of a high level, everything we can do. And then we kind of dive into what exactly is most pertinent to them. So throughout my demo, I do a lot of discovery questions, a lot of value-driven questions, picking their brain on how they do things today. Do you have the systems in place? How does this
Nice.
compare? All that good stuff. Can you see yourself using this? How much time would this save? Really just nailing the hammer on the head as far as letting them see themselves use the platform rather than just giving them this kind of blanketed demo that they're not engaging with.
Gotcha. Okay. Quick question. Are you a fan of Gundam? You know, Gundam Wing?
Yeah, actually.
Like, do you build them?
No, familiar, but I haven't built any.
Okay, cool. No, I'm a big fan of Gundam. Used to build them a lot when I was younger, during my little younger ages. So I'm curious. I just want to pick your brain a little bit more here over at Factory 4. So let's say we're building a Gundam, right? A huge Gundam.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right, Jackson, here's a demo, and then we would look at your stuff. So like, what is it really showing us? Is it like how to install software in there, or is it like I'm just trying to pick your brain, like which piece go where, and rather than just reading through the paper, we're doing it through the platform itself. What are we looking at here?
Yeah, definitely. So I like to dive into the platform itself. With production, the way I like to think of it is there's several pieces, right? There's order intake. A lot of times I have another system we can just plug in and automate that process. And then you have the tasks. So that's everything that's on your floor. So that's everything from, say you're putting together a box, like you have to get the different pieces, you have to put them together. Usually there's a little check in place, maybe a signature, the different steps. And then at the end, we're able to basically analyze all the data from people checking in, completing tasks. Maybe we're looking at how much time between tasks, how much time they spend on a specific task. So we're enabling them to make to really iron out the processes. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of people actually, it's either tribal knowledge or paper travelers. There are actually a few prospects I talked to where it was literally tribal knowledge. It was, they just know what to do. And I was, like, what if you hire someone new? How do you train them? And, so it's really just taken into that new age of standardization and really getting it on a platform rather than something on paper, which is still mind blowing to me that some people are still operating in that fashion.
Got you. Okay, so I see this now. So what I'm hearing is basically like you're on from in manufacturing or factories, given the name Factory 4, to help people from the front lines to upper management and stuff, like really measure the tasks and then how much time's going, and are you really finishing up the work you need to do, and rather than manually processing it on like a piece of paper or a clipboard, walking through, check here, sign here, check there. You guys can actually do through the software platform and stuff that you guys offer at Factory 4.
Exactly. And then
Nice.
our sweet spot is really with high mix, low volume. So that's more complicated builds. That's where a lot of systems aren't really built for it. Like there's a lot of systems out there for your more stock items. So like stuff that's sold on Amazon or like this or that. But when you get more customization and you have different steps, so like maybe you don't pass the quality check and there needs to be some additional work done and needs to be fixed. That's where a lot of systems kind of fall short. And that's why I think a lot of them do use the older processes. It's just there's no system that can really accommodate for that, where we kind of do fill that gap, which is pretty cool to have those conversations.
Yeah, you bet. Jared, tell me, man, you right now, what's your story? How'd you get into sales? Why sales? What is it about sales that, because I've been following for quite some time, right? I know as you started as SDR, and I remember you caught up attention when you're over at Chili Piper, you tried out customer success, and ultimately you went to sales enablement, and then you're now a solutions consulting at Factory 4 / sales engineer. Like, what is it about sales? Like, what's your story? When you first got started? Just give us a breakdown there.
Yeah, definitely. So my dad's actually in sales, and his father is in sales.
Word?
So so it's kind of passed down. My dad was in the financial services industry, so he actually still is selling. He does a lot of like 401k pension products, more so than the insurance side. But he's worked for all the major ones, ING, AIG, Valak. Kind of has done his rounds. But growing up, I kind of idolized that. I loved how my dad always has been like the relationship type, like relationship building, and really like made a lot of friends that were clients. So I always thought that was cool. When I went through school, I was studying business with a concentration of marketing. I actually thought I would take more of a marketing route. But I think I didn't. I think they don't do a great job of letting you know what an actual sales role is. So I kind of pictured it as like the older kind of, I mean, of course you're going to cold call, but I thought it would be a lot more car salesy than it is. So I went through the marketing classes and I actually did a sales senior project, which was really cool. I got to work with. So it's really cool. They actually launched a full minor now. There's a tech sales minor at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. A little plug there.
Really?
If anyone wants some solid reps right out of college. But I did the sales senior project. So it was a quarter-long project. We were actually sponsored by some pretty big names. The main sponsor was Gartner. We worked with Oracle,
nice.
ADP, Pepsi, some really solid ones. So we actually worked with recruiters and people who worked at those companies. We do role plays. It was like a 10-minute role play where you're selling Gartner for CIOs. We went how to do discovery. Of course, it was meant for a competition eventually. So it did have some parameters on it, but at the same token, you kind of learn the ins and outs of how to have a sales conversation. And I was chosen as a student coach. I actually got flown out to the National Collegiate Sales Competition in Kennesaw, Georgia, which was really cool. Our team did really well. I believe we placed either second or third, like one of our contestants. And then East MC did the best as a school as we ever had. There's several hundred schools and contestants that go. It was kind of funny because I wasn't a huge club guy in college. Like I was in my fraternity. I had internships, but I wasn't in a lot of like, the marketing association or the standard clubs. But going to a competition like that really got my competition spirit going. Like I played baseball in high school. And it was dope. Like it was super cool to just see all these top sales talents. I actually had already accepted my offer at Chili Pepper at that time when I went. So I was actually going up to they had a career booth. And what I did was pitching to vendors or to companies that they should sponsor Cal Poly. So I went up and I just, what are your relationships like with, relationships like with colleges? So it was really cool because it gave me my first kind of touch of like going to a conference, not even being a vendor booth and kind of selling the vendor booth. I also kind of did a little prospecting for Chili Pepper, but granted, I wasn't going to start for another 3 or 4 months. I didn't even know what the product was that well. So tried my best to build some relationships there. But I think just being in a sales conference while in college basically just kind of really made me fall in love with it. As far as Chili Pepper, I actually found it via LinkedIn. So I got really lucky, just great timing. I think I was in the beginning stages, if I remember correctly, of that senior project. And I reached out. They were pretty young at that point. That was probably, I probably applied March of 2018 or so. I graduated in June of 2018. So I'm almost 3 years out of college now, or next year will be. But I remember I had the several different stages of the interview. I interviewed with Michael Tuso in person, actually. So I drove down from San Luis Obispo down to LA, had a little WeWork, and we talked, and it went pretty well. I felt like I felt like we had a great conversation. I ended up interviewing with both of the founders, and I got the offer. So I accepted very early on. One thing that I liked was, believe it or not, I actually got a lot of pushback because I was interviewing so early from my graduation date, where I had some companies like, dude, why are you filling out applications? Where I talked to Michael, and he's like, oh no, dude, that shows initiative. I like that. And I think that just kind of gave me a really good look at the company, and I felt like I could grow there. So I accepted the offer. I was one of the first 2 SDRs. I believe I actually accepted the offer before the first SDR, but my start date was pushed. So when I joined the team, Chili Pepper was probably around 15 people. I was one of 4 on the sales team. So there were 2 SDRs and 2 account executives. So I got to see it grow. When I left the company, I believe we were at 48 employees, and our sales org was probably around 14. Of course, with the recent Series A, they grew a bit. While I was at Chili Pepper, I was an SDR for maybe 3 or 4 months. It was going pretty well, but a lot of the stuff wasn't ironed out, right? So the messaging wasn't necessarily ironed. We were still figuring out the tech stack. We were still figuring out a lot of stuff like our go-to-market strategy. And we had a need in customer success. And I sat down with the CEO one day, and he realized I was doing really well answering some of the technical questions and kind of going about things that way. So I ended up switching to customer success for a handful of months. I got to implement a number of clients. I started off. So now they have a more typical structure where there's support, customer success, account management, where before it was blanketed in one position, which is typical in startups. So I got to have experience in all those different positions, which was really valuable. That being said, I think I enjoyed it because I love sales technology. I kind of nerd out with sales processes. But customer success definitely wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do long term. I feel it's a very reactive position. It actually made me kind of anxious. It's kind of funny because I can go on a sales call where it's like a 6-figure deal, and I don't blink. Someone could be an asshole to me, and I just don't even. I'm fine, But when someone is mean to me as a CS rep, I kind of took it personally. I tried my best not to, but I think inherently people or customers want the product to work, and even if it's not even the vendor's fault, there's a lot of finger pointing. It's just inevitable. I think in a CS role, you need to be patient and you need to be a people pleaser, which I am to some degree, but I'm also a perfectionist. So I would rather own my own process than I would set up someone else's. So as I progressed through that CS role, I ended up going into a role that was is a product expert role, so to speak. After a few months in there, I ended up taking some customers again just to kind of help out. But what I was doing there is I was helping out the CS team, being a technical resource. I was working with the product department. So with the product department, I was helping with like bug bug fixes and kind of bug reporting, stuff like that, feature requests. And then I was also helping the sales team with training. Eventually, like I said, I did end up taking some customers back, so kind of doing more CS work. And then I transitioned into a sales enablement role. I believe that was, it might have been the beginning of this year, but I spent like maybe 6 or 7 months in that role. When I was in that role, I actually was a hybrid. So I was sales enablement. I built out everything on an LMS. Shout out WorkRamp. WorkRamp was a great product to use. I got to build everything out on there. I also did some sales engineering. So I was the one, that was also something I kind of blanketly did throughout my time there. I started when I was in CS and kind of fell into it, where I got looped into some sales conversations. I thought it was really cool to be the partner to the account executive, closing those deals, answering those technical questions. And then I also did some product management. So in my last month or two at the company, I actually took over a full product management workload where I was on those early morning scrums. Our development team is all over the world. So I was actually waking up at like 6 a.m. my time every day, which is kind of a grind, but I got to work with our product designer, and it was really cool being able to spec out stuff and see it come to life. Again, I thought it was incredibly interesting. I learned a ton. I wouldn't trade that experience for anything, but at the same token, I think that working with product, I saw that unless I was like C-suite or something, I would rather work with sales. I think working with sales is my true passion. So when I was able to get this opportunity of working in pre-sales as a solutions consultant, I jumped at the opportunity. I think we talked about this a little bit before we hopped on, but my manager is very experienced in the role. He comes from a PatSnap, old company, his older company, but he was there when they built out their department. So he kind of rose the ranks there. He came to this company. I'm the first hire under him. So he's the head of solutions consulting, and I'm a solutions consultant. So being able to be kind of ground level and learn from him directly has been a great experience thus far.
Nice, man. You've been all over the place with Chili Piper. I'm talking about you've been in
most departments, man. I think I think I might be tied.
Yeah, room 3, room 4, and I'm sure like if anyone's to come up to you and ask you any type of question with Chili Piper, whatever that may be, you could probably just answer it right off the bat, I'd imagine.
I still know I still have a great relationship with a lot of the workers there, as well as a lot of the clients. Still a great product. I think it was like I said, an invaluable experience for a first company, and being able to work in so many different departments. Like I have a lot of friends that are still in an SDR or just barely scratching the surface in the account executive role, where I've been able to jump over to sales, customer success, product, and now pre-sales. So I've definitely gotten to kind of do the full lap of startup world.
Yeah, no doubt. That's good stuff. And it seems to me like you're back at again, pretty much similar to a startup again, right? Factory 4. You're the first guy that they just hired and said, "Hey, Jared, we're gonna bring you on. I trust you. You've done it before. Let's go at it." And that's where you're at today, at Factory 4, huh? Jared, man, that's so. And I want to ask you something. It's just being real, right? You don't have to answer if it's if you're not comfortable with it. I'm not sure if you knew if, and this is regards to Chili Pepper. He's got Series A. If you knew they were going to get funded, would you stay?
I mean, honestly, like I thought it was a great opportunity. One thing that kind of drove it was mostly a mutual thing, is that my career path was really taking a trajectory where I was growing into roles that weren't available at the company, and it wouldn't be anytime soon. So as much as I love the team there, and I would, I definitely applaud them for the journey and everything that sort, I think for my career growth where I'm at now is definitely more advantageous. A lot of the roles I was at Chili Piper, I kind of paved my own path, so to speak. I did a lot of learning from webinars, joining a lot of networking groups, really just personal intuition. I'm a believer that being scrappy can get you far, but at the same token, someone who's been there and done that, you can learn so much. There's so many mistakes to be done, or so many mistakes to be made, where if someone else has already made those mistakes, you might as well learn. So I'd say it's definitely exciting for them. Another thing too is I've noticed a difference in industries, right? Where when you're in the sales and marketing technology world, you're moving fast. There's a million competitors, right? Like you have to grow, or else you're going to get eaten by a competitor. Where the space I'm in now, selling to manufacturers, a lot of those companies are older, so they're kind of moving slower. It's more of a cool, calm, collected approach, right? versus a hyper growth strategy. Like we're still growing at a pretty fast pace, but in the sales and marketing technology sector, you're fighting. Like there's all competitors that come up on every call. It's like you got to have competitor intel. Where what we're doing now is more, or what I'm against now is more change management, pushing against the status quo. And I'd say I definitely like the hyper growth mentality, but at the same token, I think the being able to take a cool, calm, collected approach is a little more calm, a little less hours in the day, and just overall, you can do a more, I don't know, you can be more strategic, you know, when you're building out your processes. Whereas when you're going against 6 different competitors in the same space, you kind of have to run and slap on band-aids, so to speak.
Yeah, no doubt. I know exactly what you mean. If there's like a guy down the street, you know, whatever, sometimes they just throw out some pricing. Hey, man, you know, give me $5 off. If not, I'm just gonna go to the guy across the street, whatever. But you know, we're in a B2B, we're in a B2B space, right? We gotta provide value and stuff like that. So I know what you mean, man.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah. Jared, so I want to take a few steps back here. You went to Cal Poly, right? You graduated 2018. Yeah. Man, love it. I graduated around the same year too. How old are you, man?
24. So I turned 25 in January.
Damn, boy, you are good. Dude, you are up there, man.
Thank you.
Just graduated 2018 too, whatever, 10 years out after, but love it, man. I love the hustle and the grind. So you're at Cal Poly, and you mentioned they had like a sales team thing, a sales class there, and you were in there, and then you guys went up to, you guys won like one of the nationals or something?
Yeah, so we got to go to the national competition. It was a 10-week program where the head of marketing, where she's actually now the head of the tech sales or minor as well, would kind of teach you all that good stuff. It was really cool too, because it wasn't just surface level selling. She taught how to sell to different personality types. We did a lot of role plays. We got put in different groups that we really got to refine some of our higher level sales skills. Something interesting enough, I kind of found it more fun to train and support salespeople even back then than doing the role play myself. So I think that kind of further aligned. But again, being able to go to a competition was super cool. Like not to say I wasn't super academic. I've always been a workhorse. You know, I typically am a top performer in most of my roles. I find working to be something I'm more driven towards, where when it comes to getting a letter grade, BA, same thing.
Yeah.
So
I know what you
mean. Something like that. Yeah,
sure.
But something like that where I was able to kind of push and really get that competitive spirit going, just kind of let me jumpstart my career and got me really driven to kind of just hit the ground running no matter where I went.
Yeah, Jared. So you're in LA right now, right?
Yeah.
Where did you grow up? Where did you reside at?
Yeah, so I grew up in LA. I'm actually still living moved back to the same kind of town. I'm from Westchester, so right near LAX, next to Culver City, El Segundo.
Okay.
Smack in your LA proper. I went up to school up in San Luis Obispo. I moved back. I've lived all over LA since. So I've lived in these like Pico Robertson area. I lived in Playa del Rey for a little bit.
Yeah.
Living in an apartment with a buddy in Los Angeles right now. So can't
nice.
go wrong with that. So
there you go.
Amazing, you know.
Yeah, that all summer weather besides the fire right now, right? All that dirty ass air and the COVID BS going on. But Jared, I'm curious to
the heat wave, but
oh man, that we hit. Yeah, that we hit. California's heat wave is something else. You know, it's like it's something that I don't know if it's like climate control or whatever that is, and you get super hot. So hot, almost always chili piper. You know.
Yeah, spicy, dude.
Yeah.
Didn't have any spicy food for the whole time. I was eating like ice cream and like shaved ice, you know, just keeping cool.
Yeah, Jared, I'm curious to ask. So, what were your hobbies? What were your hobbies when you were growing up? You know, as a kid, junior high, were you like building robots? Like you like to build things, or what did that look like? You know.
Yeah, so I would say I had like a handful of hobbies. I was actually super into video games. So when I was I actually was had a YouTube channel way back in the day. So I used to
really
like record. Yeah, so like
funny
enough, I hopped off like early high school.
Yeah.
Probably it was back like Modern Warfare 2 days, stuff like that.
Oh.
So I'd say that was when I got my so like I had a bunch of different things. I would say baseball was always there. Huge video game player, hanging out with friends, stuff like that. But video games was kind of my first like entrepreneurial thing, if that makes sense, where I joined it was a clan. We did like trick shots, all that good stuff. But I was able to grow my base a bit. So like my personal channel had like 1 grand. I had a friend who gave me a channel with like 2,000 or 3,000 followers, and I joined one that we grew to 10,000. And I actually had a YouTube partnership when I was like 13, 14.
Oh,
Perfect. So I
really?
made a little bit of money off of
Oh,
ads.
boy.
Granted, I didn't keep going with it. Like, I just to keep up with those kids play like 10 hours a day. I was playing like six,
Damn.
7 hours, like after school, just like literally I get home and I just play till sleep, and I just couldn't keep up.
Yeah.
And I remember I started hanging out with friends more, and I was like, yeah, this is way better than like competitive gaming and whatnot. So I kind of hung it up. But I think that's also where I kind of got my love for software to a certain extent. Like I would do a lot of editing, so I was using like Sony Vegas Pro, Adobe After Effects.
Oh, really?
Um, I also went to my high school was actually a musical like a music academy. So I mean it was a magnet. It wasn't like a full blown like
Yeah.
yeah. Like I was gonna play trumpet. It was the same period as baseball. So I ended up taking piano for 1 year and did music tech for 2 years. So I did like mixing and like producing kind of that kind of stuff, which was really cool.
Yeah.
But I got to play around with a ton of different software. So even from a young age, I was always playing around with something, whether it was like photo editing, video editing, music editing. So when it came to, selling software, I kind of feel like I have like some of it a knack for it because I've always kind of just toyed around with it. I found software to be interesting just in general.
Oh man, shit, I love that. So, what I'm hearing is like you had like a YouTube channel earlier back in the days. You were like a gamer. Is it the kind of where like you just game there, people coming to watch you and stuff like that, and you just playing games? What kind of games was that?
Yeah,
Modern Warfare.
yeah, so, yeah, like Modern Warfare, Black Ops, stuff like that. Like I started doing like commentaries, and I was like,
Enemy
God, I
AC
can't.
130 above.
Yeah, dude, I was so young. I was like, God, I watched it like none of them are up anymore, by the way. But like
Yeah.
I remember watching a few of them. I was like, God, I was awful at storytelling. Like if I was to do it again, maybe I'd do that. But I pivoted to more like highlights, so more like cool, like more digestible pieces, a little
Yeah.
quick snippets rather than me trying to tell. I mean, also like I was like 14. Who cares what I did that day? Like,
Yeah.
so,
Okay, man.
but it's interesting.
Dude, that's great, Jared. I truly believe that's probably why you're so so tech and software definitely for sure. But I really believe that's where for you growing up, you've been exposed to software everywhere. You're already using Adobe and shit like that while editing
Yep.
videos. Like I just started editing videos, right, using Shotcut. But before I try to use like one of it, I forgot what it's called, but it was like a super high class. Oh, the DaVinci or some shit like that. You know, the DaVinci.
Oh, yeah.
Fuck.
Those are difficult.
Couldn't
They're hard.
I couldn't figure. I was like, "Fuck this, man!" So I got Shotcut and stuff, right? But if you're at Adobe and you do it at the young age, I really believe that's where like your technical side, and then that's probably what rolled you out to like experience with our roles, right? You started out as CDR, and then in customer success, you're like, "Fuck that, ain't working, man. I can't be farming." Become a product expert,
Yep.
really like that sales engineer. Now you're a sales engineer at Factory 4, and now you're really throwing in the mix, right? Get what your dad taught you. Hey, you sales for a living, financial services, and roll you up, and then here you are doing sales engineering, mixing with the technical side that you always been, because you grew up doing that. To have your own channel on YouTube
Exactly.
at that age, you got to have that. To be editing videos, you got to be technical, and that's probably I'm assuming that's where you got your technical side from. Would you say that?
I'd say so. Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just
Nice.
like diving into software is just kind of how I learned it. I'm like a very hands-on learner. Like, of course, like I kind of peruse through like support docs. I hated tutorials. Like, I know that's how you get
Oh,
really good at some softwares. Like, I hated those. I'd rather just read through an article than watch like a 15-minute video overview. Like, I'm putting it
right.
at double speed and not even paying attention. I need to play around with it or see like written out instructions or be walked through it by somebody. I think that some people learn by watching those long tutorials, but definitely not my learning style.
Yeah, definitely. I know exactly what you mean, man. Hey, congratulations, you bought a product. Here's a piece of paper, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Hey, man, if you open that package, right, you get this huge old list. It's like 50 pages. It could be intimidating. But
Oh, yeah.
but like there's an easier way with the technology we have nowadays, like what you just mentioned. Hey, man, um, here's a video, how to, quick article, get straight to the gut. Get straight to the gut. Jared, so I want to pick your brain.
Exactly.
So how are we doing some time so far? I just want to make sure that's all right
Yep.
with you. Cool. All right.
Oh, I'm
So
good. Can go on as long as needed.
love it. Fantastic. Well, I'm gonna take your word for that. So I want to pick your brain at this, right? So this podcast, One Up Sells Dev podcast, whatever, geared towards new young SDR and BDR, whatever, right? So so I want to pick your brain at this. Like coming from you, just chatting with you right now, picking your brain and just picking up your technical side, your habits, your hobbies, and how you do things and how you portray it. You were a sales enablement there, right? Like you're like, hey, responsible for these are the new people, these are brand new SDR and BDR. this is how we're going to ramp them up. And I want to pick your brain from this. Like in your eyes, what does it take to build out like a successful sales enablement process? What does that look like? Is there a time frame? How do you enforce it, holding them accountable? I just want to pick your brain on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say there's a lot of steps to it. I'm a huge believer in data. I think that when people think about sales training, there's kind of this antiquated thought where they think of the old school, like, oh, we're going to teach them spin, and that's it. I think that it's important to teach like sales methodology. Like, it's great. You should absolutely use the sales methodology. You should teach them how to do value questions, how to set next steps, all that good stuff. But you need to take data. Like, you can't improve if you don't have insight into what it was, right? So I think before like building any, I mean, of course you could do baseline like product, like maybe one pagers on competitors, like basic stuff that they should know and have access to. But you need to know your baseline. You need to know what you're trying to improve. One of my favorite metrics is time to ramp. So in an SDR role, that's maybe time to first meeting booked, AE time to first demo booked, or excuse me, demo opportunity closed or something like that. Oh. But by using those metrics, you can see where your baseline is. And then from there, you can update your training accordingly. I think once you're at a certain stage, you do have to get an LMS system. Google Drive works for so long. It works for really document storage, but if you want to get more granular, you want to have tests, and you want to get it more engaging and getting more insights like that you can dive into, I think that a logical step is an LMS system. But again, I think analytics is really important, especially if you are correlating their training to their performance. So what that means is if you're running a report on someone's win rate, and you see that they just cannot win against a competitor, you can look at their training and you can go, oh, this guy never did the training on how to go against XYZ competitor. No, duh, he's not closing it. So you can really be more methodical. I think that too many times in training, you're kind of just doing it by the gut. A lot of trainers just kind of feel like they should be doing this, feel like they should be doing that. And I agree that by dissecting their videos and dissecting their performance, you can kind of do that. But if you have data to back it up, you're being way more methodical and more driven with the way you're tackling it. The other thing that I would recommend too is it's training and coaching for your B or C player. This is something that's talked about a lot in teaching as well as coaching to some degree. But for an A player, like you could give the guy a pen and paper and not even tell him who to prospect, and he's going to crush his numbers. That's just, there's some people that are like that. They can teach themselves everything. Where a B or C player, you need to cater training and you need to make an environment where someone like that can thrive. Of course, for your first few hires, you get an A player. But for a B or C player, that's someone you're taking a little bit more of a risk on. That's maybe someone who's new to sales, fresh out of college, transitioning careers, something like that. But you should have an environment where someone who is a B or C, someone who's not just necessarily just going to kill it no matter what you do, and have an infrastructure, everything from training, coachability. I think also with training, a lot of times, it's almost too much up for the rep to go out of their way to learn and to get answers. I think that you should kind of set them up for success. When they walk in that door, you should have some type of game plan. Here's how you're going to get there, and you make it digestible. So stuff like a day-by-day checklist and, kind of taking it more methodically. I think that, I mean, I hate the burn and churn mentality. Like I get it for large corporations, why they hire 100 people and then they kind of just keep on 20. But ideally, you're setting it up where you don't need to churn that many people. If you make your program such that a B or C player succeeds, there's a number of things you're doing there. The first is you can be more risky with your hires. You don't need to wait 6 months to get your perfect A player. Sometimes you have deadlines of needing to fill headcount. And again, some of those people are going to kill it if you just give them the support and structure to do so. And I think that that's a huge factor, like being able to be a little bit more flexible with your hiring and being able to give a chance to some of those people. On the flip side as well is, I hate to say you could offer those people a little bit less money, but like for a fresh out of college grad, typically their starting salary is going to be a little lower, but the upside is there. There's someone who you're going to really allow to start their career in the right place. They're going to have a lot of loyalty to your company and they're going to grow. That's someone who is less initial upfront cost and you're really building them and they're going to grow with your company. So I think that's a mindset that not enough of us have. I think that some people just kind of train and leave people out to dry. I think also having a environment of coaching is great as well. Once they're done with their training, you shouldn't just leave them off to water, like a mama bird, just letting them fly. You got to be able to have feedback and coachability. And also part of training as well is having a tight feedback loop. You shouldn't build a training process and just done. It's always changing. You know, competitors are always going to change. The landscape's going to change. Your product's going to change. Maybe there's a UI update. Why are you training your reps with the way your software used to look 6 months ago? Or why does it not have the fact that a competitor has the same feature as you now? And all of a sudden they're talking to salespeople or talking to prospects and they have wrong information. So I think all of it is really just keeping everything up to date, using data to really drive those decisions, and taking a really methodical approach to building out training. As I said, you train to the B or C student, and A student's going to get an A every time. Like, doesn't matter if they study, doesn't matter if you give them a notebook. They could have like a Rolodex and a fax machine, and they're going to kill the quota. Where the B or C is where you should be paying attention, and then you're lowering the threshold it takes for someone to excel in the role.
Nice. Oh, some deep insights right there, man. Okay. So, Jared, thank you for that. That was fucking amazing, man. I fucking love that.
Thank you, man.
Love that shit.
Been in my head for a while.
Data driven, right? So for those who doesn't know LMS, why don't you go ahead and just explain, dive deep, like what is LMS, what does that do, and how does that help you become data driven?
LMS is a learning management platform. There's a lot of big players on the market. Lessonly and WorkRamp would be Docebo. There's like a ton of them, honestly. One thing I would recommend, I use WorkRamp, huge fan. That being said, I think that there's different LMSs catered for different needs. There's some that are best for only training sales, where there's others that are more catered for using org-wide. But it's essentially a way to build out your learning management in a platform rather than everything in Google Drive. I think Google Drive and Google Docs works to some extent, but when you need to get more granular with taking videos, like just everything, Google Drive is not that cohesive. You're kind of jumping here, you're jumping there. There's different versions out there. Sometimes people make copies, you don't know what people are looking at. Where LMS, with an LMS, you can really track engagement a lot more. You can make sure you can assign out things to due dates. You can get more granular in the weeds. The way I think of it is, if you think of, for those of you who worked for more of a corporation or even like a retail job, like I had an internship at Target. I worked at Wingstop in college. Like when you join a company like that, they have a full program, and it's kind of funny to me is that you could work at like a fast food restaurant and they have you go through their online training, and there's more structure to that than some trainings in the sales world. Yeah. And I was just like, why would you not? I mean, if they have it figured out, obviously that's the better way to go about it. So yeah, it allows you to really have structure. And then another piece of that too is you get a customer success rep. Some of them allow you to also leverage their customer services team. The WorkRamp team was amazing. I got to pick the brain of not only their CS, but their professional services team as well. And they like looked at my content. They told me best practices. She literally taught me learning methodology. And I was like, oh my God, that's awesome. That's like super cool. Like versus just kind of Google Drive, you're just like, you're in a Slack group. Like, hey, does anyone have a template of how to teach people how to sell? Or like, can someone send me their sales playbook? I mean, it works, but an LMS is, they have a lot more templates. It's a lot more cohesive. It's really how to take your training to that next level. Nice.
Okay, so LMS, learning management system, right? Basically, and everything's just clicking to my head now. And this is the issues too, especially with brand new startups, right? Like, hey, shit, software's taking off. We're about to get funded. We need to scale our sales team. Let's do this. They bring on like a group of SDRs, and they're like, all right, man, Google Drive everything. Here's an SDR fact sheet. Throw it in there, and people are like downloading it and stuff like that, like you mentioned, and you don't know where it's going. Maybe to keep it to themselves, maybe it's sending around, who knows. But an LMS system is pretty much a centralized place where you can have everything on there to the point where if they need to find it, it's there. You need video, it's there. An example, it's there. All in one place, easy to navigate. Here's the issues that I see too, that when I chat with a lot of SDR BDRs at other tech organizations who's just starting up, and I ask them like, hey, what's your enablement look like? And they all tell me the same thing. Oh yeah, man, we use Google Sheets, Google Ads, not Google Ads, I'm sorry, but just in Google Drive, oh yeah, we should share drives. We Slack YouTube here, we Slack that YouTube there, we send screenshots of posts. Just fucking everybody, it's all over the place. In your experience, let's say there's like a new company just started off, like what are the few LMS that you would recommend for them? Something that you saw that worked, that in your experience you had a good experience with and found success with?
Yeah, so I'd say some of the bigger, like the thing is there's some that are only catered for enterprise. As far as like the smaller ones, when you're smaller stage, I say Lessonly or WorkRamp are more, that's more so when you have a sales team of like 10, right? I think Google Drive works to a certain extent. I would say the main downside is when you have a class of reps, right? When you have 2 reps, you can kind of teach them ad hoc. They can Slack you. But what if you have 10 people training? Like, are you really going to jump between the Slacks? Oh, can you hop on a call? Can you hop on a call? When does this do? When does this do? So I'd say standardization is key. I think at LMS, it probably makes sense to get when you're at that like 10 rep stage, or if you have a maybe a full new class or you're ramping up hiring. I'm also a fan of building an LMS prior to the big hiring stage. Ideally, I think also like the smart thing to do is if you're going to hire 15 people next year, you have 2 starting this year. Why don't you build it now? Have the 2 reps, guinea pig it, give you feedback, and then build it, because it's it's not always great to trial something in a live environment with that many people. I'm actually not 100% sure of like cheaper or kind of like LMSs for startups, but I'm sure there's a few options there. You know what? Notion's not an LMS per se, but it's something you could structure a lot more. That's actually how we currently have a lot of our things structured at Factory 4. So that's at least it's a platform that you can structure a bit more with folders and kind of making content more easily accessible. Again, Google Drive is great for storing documents, but you can't easily navigate between them. Like, I guess you either have hyperlinks where you're opening up a bunch of tabs, or you have to go back and forth. Or I think the ideal state is something that flows well. And again, I think the main key is just you want to make it as easy for people to find information as you can. Or Google Drive, like you're searching for stuff. Or in LMS, you have a folder like, oh, these are where all the battle cards are. Perfect. Versus just typing keywords like, oh, do we even have a battle card for this? So it's just really just making that accessibility easy as you can.
Got it. When you say battle card, is that more like rebuttals? Like if I run into a roadblock, if there's an objection here, they say this, they say that, this is what I should say. Is that what you mean by battle cards? Yeah,
and every company does it different. Like some companies will build battle cards against specific objections, where others will do it specific competitors. The way that we're actually building it out, as I mentioned earlier, we don't really have that many direct competitors. It's more so how we work with specific vendors or other like tools in the space. So we're actually starting to build some, and the way we're taking it is just how to approach that situation. So here are the pros of this software. Here's the gaps that we fill. Here are how our customers use both of us in parallel. So it really depends on the industry you're selling into, but it essentially is something in the back pocket a salesperson could pull up. Ideally, it's something digestible too, because in an ideal situation, if it's a new rep, you want them to be able to open it while they're on the phone and be like, oh yeah, like you kind of be able to get value out of it versus just a blurb. Like you can't read an essay while you're having a conversation,
Yeah, no doubt about that. You hit the nail on the head with that one, man. Jared, so I'm curious to just pick your brain just a little bit more on the enablement here, because reason I asked and bring this up because I know that's what you did at your previous role, and you're really successful at it, and you build out what I like to call it is a repeatable and scalable process, right? They come in, whoever, doesn't matter. We hired 10 today, we hired 20 tomorrow, 30. We can run them all through the same trade, and pretty much ramping up at scale, so to say. So. In your experience, what do you typically see that's like when it comes to, they're brand new, just fresh out of college and they're just ramping up, but where do you typically see that's like a roadblock, a common roadblock from, even with the LMS system, something like that's just a common roadblock that just that takes a little bit more time than it has to, like no matter what, they still gotta keep going at it?
I would say some people are more, I mean, it's really different for everybody. I think one of the more common ones is just familiarity with the tech stack. Coming out of college, especially if you haven't used any sales technology with a more robust system, just learning Salesforce can be a lot. Like, where am I filling out this? Where am I filling out that? Where if you add in 6 or 7 other tools, like crap, some people freeze. Like some people are a little more tech savvy than others, where myself, I didn't find it too overwhelming. I think my management did a good job of training me. Luckily enough, I also had the other SDR had been in SDR roles previously, so he was able to kind of walk me through it. So I'd say the processes and the tech stack is typically something that is kind of difficult. On top of that, I'd say a lot of the other stuff is just coachability things. So stuff like some people are nervous to make a cold call. Some don't know how to manage their time effectively. So I think that's why having like weekly check-ins or daily is very advantageous, just to see where their gaps are. I'm also a fan of kind of something my manager does, which I love, is we have weekly check-ins and he lets me set the agenda. So what do I need help with? How can he support me? He doesn't have like this overwhelming thing where boom, 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 boom. Okay, any questions? It's something that's very back and forth, and I can let him know what I need to be. or what I need to get supported. And I think that's the mentality a lot of managers should take. I think it really makes it a lot easier to kind of have that tight feedback loop. But again, I think a tight feedback loop and not just letting them off to do everything on their own is important. And again, I think that when you're building some of the training materials, you should almost assume that they know nothing. Of course, if they already used something at a previous company, they could just go through that training super quick. Or conversely, like a Zoom, like they know how to use Zoom. They don't need to, you don't need to sign that out. But you should assume they know nothing, because some of them don't. But at the same token, others do. So you got to make it so, again, kind of the whole mentality of like coaching and training to your B or C player. But yeah, no, I think it definitely depends though on the company, the complexity of the sales cycle, and just how tenured that person who might be new is. But again, like I think that you learn quicker when you do, versus just kind of being in training for 6 weeks. So I think you got to find that happy medium where you have a training schedule, but they're also getting calls in maybe day 5, day 6, even if it's like lower ICP, lower targets, something where they can get the ball rolling and you're not over inundating them with data. I'm a huge fan of also having checklists on the day by day. I think that when you just give them a list of, oh, here's everything you need to do in training, or here's all week 1, I think making it daily checklists or even like every other day, it's a lot more digestible. That's something I saw with the LMS is I was assigning, we assigned out we did some automation where it assigned everything. I was like, holy crap, they have like 18 things on their screen. They're not gonna, it kind of was like,
better finish it one day, bro.
Yeah, I was like, wow, like that if that was my first day, I'd be like, what do I press into? It's almost like analysis. I think they call it analysis paralysis. We have too many options. You don't take a choice. Yeah. So I think having it digestible day by day, maybe that's even not sending them some material until their second week. Maybe it's with letting them know, hey, like, I know we haven't dove into prospecting yet. We're going to talk about that next week. You're going to learn the product this week. But I think it's also important to kind of break everything into different buckets of training. So like, I don't think you should bucket everything into one. You should have sales process, your sales stack, your product itself, industry training. And you should kind of course, you can kind of intertwine some of those topics, but you got to realize that different people have different aptitudes for different topics. And you got to kind of train to that. And also people are different types of learners. So being able to identify if there's a visual learner, someone that needs to be talked through something, someone who just kind of gets it. Because if you only have like a video, like some people are going to get it and others are going to like zone out. Like I've definitely watched a video or two that I just didn't grasp what I just saw, So I think making it so people can play to their strengths is one of the biggest things you can do when setting up someone for success.
Oh my God. Yes. You just hit the nail on the head right there. You 110, man. I'm with you all the way. And that's the problem that we see a lot too right now, even till this day. Like they come in, they're hard. Congratulations, Merry fucking Christmas. But they said, all right, man. Hey, Jared, week 1, this is what we're gonna do, and in week 2, we're just gonna throw you in the woods. And they don't really like take into connect like what kind of learner you are. Like you mentioned, like some that are more visuals, there's some that are more readers, some are more advid and stuff. But you really gotta pick the brain and find out, and then see how they really learn, so that you can correlate with that accordingly. Oh man, that was straight money. Okay, so I want to ask you this just before we start wrapping this up here, and so Jared, in the sales development world, they say typically, hey man, ramp time is 3 months, 3 months. But realistically, you'd really take a deep dive down to those to be like a true master of the art at the role, to truly understand what sales development is, why it's here, why they do what they do, and what the process really is. What to truly be able to explain what sales development really is, rather than just booking a demo. That's what we do, but the why behind it is like about 6 months or so. Companies come in, hey, 3 months, fully ramped, we need results. And sometimes I truly believe like if like a lot of SDR and BDRs get cut a little bit too early, or to get in trouble and stuff like that, to the point where if you give them at least like 1 or 2 more months, they would break out the shell and just fully strive. I also wonder if we can get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that ramp time is very relative, right? Like I think that sometimes it's very arbitrary, where people just throw the 3 months, but like some sales cycles are 6 months. Like it's difficult. Like other businesses are seasonal. I think you should find trends, but at the same token, I think that you have to evaluate I think there's other factors. Like maybe they're not scheduling a ton of demos, but they're really quality. Everything's closing. And I think you got to identify that, and you got to have more of a strategic plan, right? Something that actually happened at Chili Piper was I think it was like a 3-month ramp time as well. But I remember the CEO like, "Oh, are you nervous you're not going to hit quota?" I was like, "Oh, like kinda." Like anybody said, he's like, "Oh, if you don't hit it, we didn't hit it. We're gonna figure it out." And I was like, "Oh, huh?" It was cool, and I was like, "Wow, that was really reassuring." And I think that's how companies should kind of take the approach. Of course, if someone's not hitting their numbers month after month, maybe it's not a good fit. That's not to say that sales isn't a good fit for them. I remember hearing a talk where someone said that salespeople are one of the positions that will end up in roles that aren't a good fit, and that's because we're all so social. We could talk, we could pass an interview. But for example, if I was selling like cloud infrastructure, like I don't know what I'm, it's kind of over my head. Where some people are able to sell like consumer goods. So even if you're not succeeding in an SDR role, that's not to say that sales isn't for you. It might be the coaching, it might be the culture, it might be the product or industry. So I think there's a lot of different factors to that. But as I said, I think that ramp time is and something you always want to mitigate. But at the same token, some people are inevitably going to hit it faster than others. I think there's other factors, like have they been an SDR before? They're probably going to hit their numbers a little bit quicker than everyone else. So I think that you have to take it as variables versus just this blanket, "Oh, we just hired 5 SDRs. They all need to book so many meetings by month 3. But that being said, if you're at a certain stage, you kind of have to find where that line is of where do we, get a little bit more in the weeds. But also I think that you have to shift things. Like if you just kind of let them keep going and you're not helping them, you're not coaching them, do you really expect them to hit their numbers unless they like pay for a Pantheon class from like Josh Braun or something, you can't just expect them to go get coaching elsewhere. You need to create a culture where you're figuring out and you're identifying those issues internally and you're really working towards it. And unfortunately, if you do get to the point where they're still not hitting their numbers, maybe that's the time to have that conversation on whether or not the role is a good fit. Ideally, if they are like a solid worker and they know your product and stuff like that, maybe you can find another role internally, whether that's like account management, CS, something like that. Or ultimately, maybe they just need another industry. But at the same token, I think that having a blanketed 3-month ramp time just doesn't help anyone. I think it's just it's kind of arbitrary. I kind of get it as like a high level guideline, but at the same token, I think that if you really want your company and your employees to succeed, you have to take more of a personal approach, which is kind of how I think all training should be, because everyone's different. You can't just blanket it like that.
Yeah. Oh my God. That was so much gold nuggets right there. Dude, that's amazing, man. How you just mentioned your previous CEO to Nick, right? Nicholas, how he says, "Hey, if you didn't hit quota, we didn't hit quota." Man, that's a leadership shit right there. And I love it. And a lot of companies are typically say that too, right? Hey, 3 months ramp. 3 months ramp. And really it's more like it's kind of like a danger zone for the reps. You think about it. It's like, as it gets closer, it's like, I'm going to get my head chopped off. Oh, it's week 2, about getting close. Every time it gets closer to that 3 months, your head about to get chopped off. It's kind of like a frightening and scary stuff for that. So Jared, just before we get started, I want to ask you. So you mentioned about employee, salesperson, employee A and employee B. What are a few things you can do to like really differentiate and truly like a key indicator or some type of diagnostic to get that up front to the point where, let's say I'm interviewing like 3-4 leads, girl, guy, whatever. Like what makes them employee sales A or B?
Yeah, absolutely. So before I dive into that, one other thing I also wanted to touch on with my previous point was I think some people are so fast it's churn that it's almost ridiculous. Is that I've seen companies that have fired like several SDRs and then they hire 10 more the next week or the next month, and it's like, wouldn't you rather continue to invest the people you already trained? It's almost like it doesn't make sense to me. I feel like you already spent so much time building them up. Why not continue to figure out what's wrong versus just kind of having a whole new class? But to your point, so I guess would that be like are you asking like the interview process, like if you're interviewing 2 people?
Yeah. Like what are the traits? How to find them up front? Is it like more like a tenure to come in? Hey, I used outreach for 2 years on this guy. I could come in and start using outreach here. What does that look like?
Definitely. So I'd say when you're earlier stage, unfortunately, you do have to be a little more picky with tenure. Like when you only hiring 1 SDR, it's not always the easiest or smartest to go with a younger rep or brand new rep. The risk to reward ratio isn't there always. That being said, I think if you're like in a stage where you can afford that, I think that there's several things at play. The first one is coachability. adaptability. So like, is this someone who I'm going to give a training session and they just like in one ear out the other, they don't care? Is this someone who's going to jump after 6 months? There's some people that just do that. They're in there for a dollar amount, which is okay for some companies. They don't mind that. But for other companies, like we just trained this guy. Oh crap, we don't have an SDR anymore. So I think I wouldn't say loyalty, because you're your own person. You should be able to leave the company if you have a better opportunity, and the company should wish you the best. Right. But you want someone who wants to grow in the role, who's going to ask, like, who is kind of willing to or wants to have a career trajectory there. Another thing too is people who did the research. There's some people who are like, obviously don't know what your company did. You're interviewing them and they're just like, they didn't do the research. You want someone who's picking your brain. What's the day-to-day? What are your competitors like? They really did the research, and it shows, not only does it show they are smart about the interview process, that they have interest, right? Did they just apply to 100 SDR roles trying to, just shooting 100 shots, eyes closed, trying to make one? Or did they like your company? Is there a genuine reason that they want to work there? I remember at Chili Piper, we used to get some people like, oh, I like remote work. And it was just like, okay, like cool. But like, even if you're BSing it, like, come on, like you got to give something. Like personally, I just love software. That's typically what I speak to. I love things that improve processes. So I think if they have some general interest, they're going to go far. That's another thing too. If they're not interested in your industry or your product, like probably not a great fit. I mean, not to say that's true for everybody, but if you're fundamentally not interested in what you're doing day to day, especially if you're selling it, you're not going to sell it as well. If this is something that you live and breathe, like I actually love software. I think it's actually really nifty to be able to do stuff. I think having that mentality makes your job easier. So it's a lot easier to go on the grind, a lot easier to persuade people. Like, how are you going to sell something you don't believe in yourself? So there's a lot of factors, I'd say. Another thing too is, of course, you got to test their sales aptitude to a certain degree. I think that with so many candidates on the market, a lot of people are just another resume in the stack. So you got to do what you can to stand out. Like that, whether that is, internal referrals are huge. So just picking the brain of people who are in the position you want. How did you get it? Who should I talk to? And especially in an SDR role, doing some cold outreach, like whether it be to your hiring manager, it can be even very light, just like, oh, I'm interested in the position. I'd love to pick your brain for 15 minutes, something like that. But anything to differentiate. And if you're not comfortable reaching out to a hiring manager, they're going to assume you're going to be a little docile or a little like a hump, or, not a go-getter when it comes to booking meetings or whatever your role may be.
Nice.
So anything to differentiate yourself. And another thing too is if you don't have relevant experience, you can always cater it, right? Like, you do have work experience, hopefully, but if you have work experience, there's something that you can twist in. Like maybe you did retail sales, like you told people, and in-face sales is a whole different ballgame. It's difficult. Maybe you did customer service at like a corporation. Maybe you were a executive team leader at a Target or something like that. There are tangible skills that transition into the role, So I think that's the big thing too, where some people just come into an interview and like they just don't talk to their experiences like it's applicable, where in reality, professional skills are applicable across industries. It's just finding the way to cater it right. Like, oh, like I was able to, I was the one who dealt with returns and I had a blank success rate. I learned how to deal with very difficult customers. Like you see, that's directly applicable to not only getting, told to F off on cold calls or like CS reps. Yeah, exactly. So I think some people just are too slow or too, like they just don't jump at leveraging their existing experience. And again, like I think that applying to a lot of companies is a good idea. Of course, you should be personalized with your resume, with your cover letter, but never put all your eggs in one basket. If you're in a second round interview with one place, you shouldn't just wait to see where it is. You should definitely do what you can and do your research to find a handful of companies that are a fit. Like being proactive in your job search is going to make a huge difference versus just hitting easy apply once every 2 weeks.
Yeah. 100, man. I love that. That sounds great. That's fucking awesome, dude. You're absolutely right, man. Differentiating themselves is the way, how they gotta do it, especially in this job market right now during the pandemic, right? Everyone got let go. It's like everyone's doing videos and running cadences on the SDR managers now. You gotta do something else, dog. Like, hey, man, do something like take them out for coffee, Uber, eat something or something. Just like gotta do something else. Jared, man, you really love everything you've been doing, man, and been following your journey, And thank you too for being an active member in SDU. Yeah, the feedbacks that you give me help me a lot too, and I thank you for that. And I mean it sincerely. So just to wrap it up here, before we ask like the final question, I just want to give this context here and pick your brain on this. So let's say there's like say there's an SDR and BDR right now, right? 4 months in, 5 months in, their company's taking off, privately owned, tech and SaaS about to blow up soon, and then they want to become a sales enablement manager, or perhaps maybe they found a niche that this company that they're at would benefit from it. So let's say they want to bring this up to upper management, stuff like that, or they want to become that person to be sales enablement, to be and take full charge, 100% full sales enablement, teaching, ramping people up, all that stuff. So if that person exists today and is in that current situation, what advice do you have for them?
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually something I somewhat did. I kind of, again, paved the way for some of my positions. I think a big thing is kind of communicating with management that you do want to take on that extra initiative. Like if you're kind of just scheming in the shadows, no one's going to know you want that. So I think direct management is a great place to start. If it is something to talk with your CEO, especially when you're a smaller stage, before talking to your CEO, I would make a little memo or something, just kind of high level idea of that. Another good idea past just a idea of what you want to shift to is a transitionary plan. So what that can entail of is you taking on additional responsibility in your current role. Of course, it's a little more work in the short term, but at the same token, you're kind of proving out what you want to do. So maybe that's, oh, you know what, like, let me build out some battle cards, or let me build out some, let me start leading the trainings. Let me take some initiative, and then we'll start to transition to the other role. Especially if you are helping with backfilling and training the person who's going to take your position. So I would say communication with management is huge. Like, again, if you're just talking about it, it's not going to happen, unfortunately. If you get internal buy-in, then that transitionary plan makes it more feasible. It's not just, hey, I want to shift today. It's, hey, like, I know that we're growing. I think this is a pertinent issue. I think this is somewhere I can really do some damage. And then from there, you're building your case and you're making a game plan to make it happen. And ideally, it will happen. Unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't. But on the flip side, if you do start doing some of those, even if it's not a full-time role, if you're doing those initiatives in your current role, if you were to change companies, all of a sudden you have experience building enablement materials and maybe a entry-level positions available elsewhere. So even if you don't have the opportunity to take over that full-time internally, doing some of those tasks and gaining the experience of doing the role in your current company is a great way to kind of segue yourself to set yourself up for a role like that in the future.
Nice. Hashtag money. My boy Jared Wexler in the house. Dude, Jared, that was fucking fire, man. Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for hopping on.
Much appreciated, man.
Nice, man. This was amazing. I love this. So, okay, so just to wrap things up here, Jared, just before we wrap things up, is there any shout out you want to give to anyone, someone that was important to you, helped you out where you're at today, or anyone like that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, whole Chili Piper team, like, honestly, as a sales marketing team, check them out. And then, of course, Factory 4 as well. Like, my manager, Chris Bustos, is a stud. But, I mean, granted, most people watching this are probably SDRs, but if anyone knows any people that need a software to help with their manufacturing, definitely reach out to me. Or conversely, I'm also more than happy to kind of just talk about the industry, help people transition positions, kind of mentoring role. I'm definitely more than happy to always chat sales, marketing, or anything SaaS, really.
There you go. Jared, there's someone out here listening on the pod. Hey, man, dude, thank you so much. I want to reach out to you and say thank you, man. What's the best way to do so?
I'd say LinkedIn would probably be the best. And then I'm pretty active on my LinkedIn. Unless you're trying to sell me something weird, I'll usually reply.
Connect and pitch, baby.
Oh, it's too many times. And I get weird ones sometimes, like finance.
Really? Like what? Which one do you remember first pops up to your head? The weird one.
I had one guy who was trying to sell me working, I guess he was like a personal trainer or something. And then I had another one who was just like, hey buddy, thanks for connecting. I'm reaching out from Canada. Where do you reside? I'm like, what's going on? He just slid on my DMs or something. I had no idea. He's like an engineer. I was like, is he selling me or is he trying to like get to know me? Or I don't know. LinkedIn's interesting,
Yeah, no doubt, man. That's fucking funny, man. All right, you guys, and that wraps up for the One Up Sales Development Podcast. Mr. Jared Wexler, Solution Consulting over at Factory 4. Thank you so much for hopping on. We truly appreciate you, brother.
Awesome.